First, it says here, the natural and aboriginal history of Tennessee up to the first settlements therein by the white people in the year 1768. All right, so dodge the hijack when they're saying white Europeans. This is by John Haywood, and this is from 1823, all right, all the way from 1823. First, then, of their size. This is ascertained by the length and dimensions of the skeletons which are found in East and West Tennessee. These will prove demonstratively that the ancient inhabitants of this country, either the primitive or secondary settlers, were of gigantic stature, all right, giants, compared with the present races of Indians. On the farm of Mr. John Miller of White County are a number of small graves, and also many large ones, the bones in which show that the bodies to which they belong when alive must have been 7 feet high and upwards. About the year 1814, Mr. Lawrence found in Scarborough's Cave, which is on the Calf Killer River, a branch of the Caney Fork, about 12 or 15 miles from Sparta, in a little room in the cave, many human bones of a monstrous size. He took a jawbone and applied it to his own face, and when his chin touched the concave of the chin bone, the hinder ends of the jawbone did not touch the skin of his face on either side. He took a thigh bone and applied the upper end of it to his own hip joint, and the lower end reached 4 inches below the knee joint. Mr. Andrew Bryan saw a grave opened about 4 miles northwardly from Sparta on the Calf Killer Fork. He took a thigh bone, and raising up his knee, he applied the knee joint of the bone to the extreme length of his own knee, and the upper end of the bone passed out behind him as far as the full width of his body. Mr. Lawrence is about 5 feet 10 inches high, and Mr. Bryan about 5 feet 9. Mr. Sharp Whitley was in a cave near the place where Mr. Bryan saw the graves opened. In it were many of these bones. The skulls lie plentifully in it, and all other bones of the human body, all in proportion and of monstrous size. All right, giant bones, guys. This is not a tabloid book we're reading. This is an actual anthropological book. Human bones were taken out of a mound on Tennessee River below Kingston, which Mr. Brown saw measured by Mr. Sims. The thigh bone of those skeletons, when applied to Mr. Sims' thigh, were 1.5 inches longer than his, from the point of his hip to his knee. Supposing the whole frame to have been in the same proportion, the body it belonged to must have been 7 feet high or upwards. Many bones in the mounds there are of equal size. Suppose a man 7 or 8 feet high, that is, from 18 inches to 2 feet taller than men of the common size. Suppose the body broader in the same proportion, also his arms and legs. Would he not be entitled to the name of a giant? Colonel William Shepard, late of North Carolina in the year 1807, dug up on the plantation of Colonel Joe Lewis, 2 miles from Nashville, the jawbones of a man which easily covered the whole chin and jaw of Colonel Lewis, a man of large size. Some years afterwards, Mr. Cassidy dug up a skeleton from under a small mound near the large one at Bledsoe's Lick in Sumner County, which measured little short of 7 feet in length. Human bones have been dug up at the plantation where Judge Overton now lies, in Davidson County, 4 miles southwesterly from Nashville, in Macon a cellar. These bones were of extraordinary size. The underjaw bone of one skeleton very easily slipped over the jaw of Mr. Childress, a stout man, full-fleshed, very robust, and considerably over the common size. These bones were dug up within the traces of ancient walls, all right, ancient walls, in the form of a square of 200 or 300 yards in length, situated near an excellent, never-failing spring of pure and well-tasted water. The spring was enclosed within the walls. A great number of skeletons was found within the enclosure, okay? Listen to what they're finding here, buried in Tennessee, guys. Walls, ancient walls with skeletons of people 7 to 8 feet tall, a few feet below the surface of the earth. On the outer side were the traces of an old ditch and rampart thrown up on the inside. Some small mounds were also within the enclosure. There was even small mounds inside these things. At the plantation of Mr. William Shepherd in the county of Giles, 7.5 miles north of Pulaski, on the east side of the creek, is a cave with several rooms. The first 15 feet wide and 27 long, all right? A cave with rooms, guys. Listen to this. 4 feet deep. So 15 feet by 27 feet long, 4 feet deep. The upper part of solid and even rock. Into this cave was a passage, which had been so artfully covered that it escaped detection till lately. The hallways were even decorated, artfully covered. You hear this? A flat stone 3 feet wide and 4 feet long rested upon the ground and inclining against the cave enclosed part of the mouth. At the end of this, and on the side of the mouth left open, is another stone rolled, which filling this also closed the whole mouth. When these rocks were removed and the cave opened, all right, you guys hear there was like these big stones that were covering these entries, just like these ancient movies like Indiana Jones, where you move it, this rolling door, and then behind it is like another, room or whatever. So again, when these rocks were removed and the cave opened, on the inside of the cave were found several bones: the jawbone of a child, the arm, bone of a man, the skulls and thigh bones of men. The whole bottom of the cave was covered with flat stones of a bluish hue, being closely joined together, and of different forms and sizes. They formed the floor of the cave. Upon the floor the bones were laid: the hat of Mr. Egbert Shepherd, 7 inches wide and 8 inches long, but just covered and slipped over one of the skulls, okay? Big skulls. At the mouth of Obed's River, on the point between it and the Cumberland River, which is high ground, certain persons in digging struck a little below the surface 4 stones standing upright and so placed in relation to each other as to form a square or box, all right? 4 pillars, guys. Listen to this. This is what they're finding, which enclosed a skeleton placed on its feet in an erect posture. It was standing up. The skull was large enough to go over the head of a man of common size. They literally put it on like a hat. The thigh bone applied to those of a man of ordinary stature reached from the joint of his hip to the calf of his leg. Literally finding giants here, guys. About 10 miles from Sparta, in White County, a conical mound was lately opened, and in the center of it was found a skeleton 8 feet in length. I mean, we got so many reports of this. We know what they were finding, and we know they were destroying numerous mounds. We got the report of all these destroyed mounds. They weren't even recorded. We didn't even know they were there. This is one of them. They found an 8-foot skeleton in it. With it was found a stone of the flint kind, very hard, with 2 flat sides, having in the center circular hollows exactly accommodated to the balls of the thumb and forefinger. This stone was 1.5 inches in diameter, the form exactly circular. It was about 1/3 of an inch thick and made smooth and flat for rolling, like a grindstone, to the form of which indeed the whole stone was assimilated. When placed upon the floor, it would roll for a considerable time without falling. The whole surface was smooth and well polished, and must have been cut and made smooth by some hard, metallic instrument. No doubt it was buried with the deceased, because for some reason he had set a great value on it in his lifetime, and had excelled in some accomplishment to which it related. The color of the stone was a dingy white inclining to a darkish yellow. At the side of the skeleton were also found 2 flat stones, about 6 inches long, 2.5 wide at the lower part, and about 1.5 at the upper end, widening in the shape of an axe or hatchet from the upper to the lower end. The thickness of the stone, about 1/10 of an inch below the upper, and exactly equidistant from the lateral edges. A small hole is neatly bored through each stone, so that by a string run through, the stone might be suspended on the side or from the neck as ornament. One of these stones is the common limestone. The other is semi-transparent, so as to be darkened by the hand placed behind it, and resembles in texture those stalactical formations like white stone, which are made in the bottoms of caves by the dripping of water. When broken, there appears a grain running from one flat side to the other, like the shootings of ice or saltpetre, of a whitish color inclining to yellow. The latter stones are too thin and slender for any operation upon other substances, and must have been purely ornamental. Guys, they're talking about they're finding this stuff with an 8-foot skeleton in this conical mound they destroyed and opened. The first described stone must have been intended for rolling, for why take so much pains to make it circular, if to be used in flinging? Or why, if for the latter purpose so much pains taken to make excavations adapted to the thumb and finger? The conjecture seems to be a probable one, that it was used in some game played upon the same principles as that called nine pins, and the little round balls like marbles, but of larger size, were so disposed as that the rolling stone should pass through them. Such globular stone, it is already stated, was found in a mound in Maury County. With this large skeleton were also found 8 beads and a human tooth. The beads were circular and of a bulbous form, the largest about 1/4 of an inch in diameter, the other smaller, the greater part of them tumescent from the edge to the center, at which a hole was perforated for a string to pass through and to connect them. The inner sides were hard and white, like lime indurated by some chemical process. The outside was a thin coal of black crust, very much resembling Japan. When we reflect that the Scythian nations, all right, Scythian, later known as Saxons or sons of Isaac, Scythian nations between the Danube and the Tonias, as late as within 1 century of the Christian era, were of a size which astonished the southern inhabitants of Europe and Asia, that they scalped their enemy, that they buried their dead in heaps of earth thrown over them. All right, you guys hear that? We've gone over this, that the Scythians, the Saxons, burying the dead in mounds, and they were of great stature. You hear that? It matches with what they're finding here, with such articles as were deemed by the deceased most valuable in his lifetime, and that their tumuli or barrows are yet to be seen in the plains towards the upper part of the Irtysh and Janis, and from the banks of the Volga to the Lake Baikal. We cannot refrain from the conclusion that this skeleton belonged to a human body of the same race. It must be a Saxon. Education and notions with those who lived on the Volga, Tonais, and Obey. The same unknown cause which, in the course of 2,000 years, has reduced the size of the ancient Scythians and their tribes, the Gauls and Germans and Sarmatians, has produced the same effects here. The descendants of these giants, both in the Old and New World, agree with each other in bulk, as their ancestors did with each other, which proves a uniform cause operating equally both in the Old and New World. All right, so touch the hijack, because this is the true Old World. The decrease in bulk seems to have kept pace everywhere with the increase of warm temperature and with the abbreviation of longevity. The giants of Hebron and Gath, and those of Laconia and Italy, whose large skeletons to this day attest there they formerly dwelt, compared with those now found in the West Tennessee, demonstrate that a change of climate or of some other cause has worked a remarkable change in the human system. And with respect to the mammoth, the megalonyx, and other animals, has either extinguished or driven them into other and far distant latitudes. So this author is saying, hey, something happened. I don't know if it was climate change or whatever, but people seem to have gotten shorter, or these tall people ain't around anymore like they were back in the day. Nature, as it grows in age, is less vigorous than at the beginning. In its early age, it was. Its productions correspond with its debility, and the time must come when she, like all her productions, will give up the ghost and work no more. But the principal use we have to make of the skeleton before us is to discover first that he came from a cold or northern climate. I don't know why he thinks that. Why does it have to be a cold or northern climate and not from the south, as the primitive aborigines did? For men of large stature were never found within the tropics. And of course, this is misinformation on his part because we have found numerous finds of giant skeletons in South America, Central America as well. Secondly, that he must have come from the north of Europe or of Asia. All right, so why? Why is he trying to put the giant coming in from somewhere else? Because of the similarity of customs already remarked. And thirdly, that he probably belonged to those northern tribes, probably, which some centuries ago exterminated the nations which had come from the south and were settled upon the Cumberland and its waters. With this skeleton was found another nearly of the same size, with the top of his head flat and his eyes placed apparently in the upper part of his forehead. So this is a whole other skeleton they're finding here in Tennessee. The Aztecs or Mexicans represent their principal divinities as their hieroglyphical manuscripts prove, with a head much more flattened than any which have been seen amongst the Caribs, and they never disfigured the heads of their children. But many of the southern tribes have adopted the barbarous custom of pressing the heads of their children between two boards, in imitation, no doubt, of the Mexican or Mexican form, which in their estimation was beautiful or in some way advantageous. And here it may not be amiss to mention that the Chileans who lived as far to the south of the equator as formerly did the Scythians, Goths, and Vandals, Gauls, and Germans, so remarkable in ancient times for their stature, did on the other side of it, were men of large stature. One remark may be of some use in the drawing of inferences from the preceding facts. The skeletons we find are entire under conical mounds, or in part consumed by fire, and under such mounds or entire in shallow graves, with the flat rocks placed on the edges, at the sides, and at the head and feet, or are entire above the common surface, and in the conical mounds enclosed in rocks placed together in the form of a box, or stand erect in such boxes with the head some depth below the surface. To burn and cover with a mound is Hindoic aggression and belonging to the ancient countries of Asia Minor. He's saying only those people do it, but we did that here. You find numerous mounds here, guys. Come on, this is mound country or mound cities right here, America. You guys know that. All kinds of different mounds. So it's not just found in the cultures of the Hindoic aggression people of Asia Minor, and probably belonged to the Aborigines of America. Of course it did, properly so called. To cover the entire body is Scythic. Oh, it's Saxon. Oh, it's something the sons of Isaac do. Oh, okay. To bury in graves or in boxes is Ethiopic. Oh, the Western Ethiopians. Remember the two Ethiopias? You mean people of dark complexion? Egyptian? Oh, to bury in boxes, Egyptian. Yeah, well, this is Egypt. This is the true ancient Egypt. That's why. And in part, this is also Hebraic. All right. So this is the true old world. This is what they're finding here, guys. These customs, the way they're burying the dead, what they're finding here in the mounds, these giant skeletons, the way they're buried, the pebbles and everything resembles, as these people are saying, these old world cultures, the Ethiopians, the Egyptians, and the Hebrews. The Hebrews haven't learned it during their residence in Egypt, though they did not generally adopt it. It may be concluded that the mounds over entire bodies are Scythic. Graves and boxes, Hebraic, and boxes in the mounds, Hebraic and Scythic. And of course, that the unconsumed skeletons we see here are either pure Scythians or Hebrew Scythians. Guys, come on, man. What is a Scythian? Later known as the Saxons or the sons of Isaac. We already got the drop. Look how they're comparing it here, Scythians or Hebrew Scythians. Who are they finding in the mounds? These large bones he's saying are the sons of Isaac, according to this author, huh? Whilst all others are Hindoic, or in other words, Aboriginal. So Hinduic means Aboriginal? Uh-oh. The large men of the world have always been found in the north, and they have often invaded and broken up the people of the south. They have never been found in the south, nor have the people of the south ever broken up their settlements there. All right, again, they have found giant skeletons in South America and Central America, and marched upon those of the north to expel them from their possessions to make room for themselves. Of course, there's been wars between people coming from the south. The men who deposited the skeletons we are now contemplating were of northern growth, and they came to the south to drive away the inhabitants whom they found there and to seat themselves in their possessions. All right. This is what they're saying. They came, must be Europeans that came from this, literally trying to say is Vikings, Scythian, eventually Saxon became Vikings who eventually came here, right? But maybe they're seeing it in reverse. This is the true Holy Land. Who are the sons of Isaac?